Hello, so today we are going to create this outer space spaceship collage, and we're going to start with the background paper, and then we're going to be using red, yellow, and blue paper, the primary colors, to create our spaceship, and then we'll glue it onto our outer space background paper. So let's start with this fun background first. We're going to start with a black piece of paper, and it's very important that you write your name on your paper today. Use a white crayon so it shows up, and then you need to write the letter of the class that you have art. So either you have art on A day, B day, or C day, and you're going to write that letter. And then you're going to place your paper facing side up. Your name is going to go down. You're going to place it in the box, and the box might have some wet paint around the edges from a person who went before you, and that's okay. Just lay it flat down on the back, and that's okay if the back of your paper gets a little bit of paint. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the white part to the background paper. So here is a background paper without a spaceship on it. And we're going to do this white part. And the way that we do that is, it's pretty fun. We're going to use marbles and white paint. So I have an egg tray here with one large marble and one small marble. And you're going to use a spoon so you don't have to get your fingers all messy with white paint, and get white paint on all sides of the marble. So you're just going to kind of move the marble around in the egg tray a little bit till you see that there's white paint on each marble. Then you're going to use your spoon, and you're going to set one marble on one side of the cardboard box. You're not going to set it on your black paper. If you do set it on your black paper, that's okay. And then I like to set my marble, another marble, on the side of the paper, and one marble either at the top or the bottom of the paper. And that way I have lines that kind of go all over the paper. And then you get to lift the box up and tilt it to make the marbles run across your black paper. And tilt it forwards and backwards and side to side. And if you have some pink and green paint that's kind of on the edges of the box, the marble might pick that up and drag that across your black paper, and that's okay. That just creates some more interest. So after you get a good amount of white lines on your paper, then you're going to use your spoon to pick up the marbles and place them back in the egg tray. Oops. Okay. Then after you do that, you're going to print some pink and green circles onto the background of your painted paper. So here's my painted paper. So now I'm going to add those pink and green circles. And whenever you're stamping something, it's called a monoprint. It means that you're printing it one time. And so I'm going to take this found gadget that's a circle and dip it in the pink paint, and I'm going to stamp some pink circles on my paper. And they can touch and overlap if you want. You can do a lot of circles, or you can just do a few circles. It's up to you. But I want some pink and green, so here's my green. And my green paint here is a little bit thicker and clumpier than my pink paint. My pink paint was a good consistency. Alright, and it's okay if you get a little pink in your green because you stamped the green on top of the wet pink. So the background paper is finished. What you're going to do is carefully lift this background paper up out of the box, and you're going to put it on the drying rack, and you're going to let somebody else go and put their black paper in the box and do those steps for themselves. So now that your background paper is complete, you're ready to create your spaceship. So I've got to get those supplies. I've made some tagboard patterns for your spaceship, and then I have some fun primary colored paper in baskets. Some printed pattern papers. And so let's just take a minute to look at the patterns that are in the basket, just to get you familiar with the pieces. And you might want to go ahead and take some time to kind of look at the pieces that are in there to see what your options are for your spaceship. You're going to make one spaceship, so you kind of want to pick pieces that you really like. And you kind of want to put your spaceship together the way that you want your spaceship to look, not like your neighbors. You want your spaceship to look different than your neighbors. So I've got all these great pieces to a spaceship. So the first part of the spaceship I like to work on is I like to pick the body of my spaceship. So you have two choices. You have this long rectangle for the body of your spaceship or the short squarish rectangle. So on my finished example here, I used the long skinny rectangle, but you might want to use this. So let's say I choose this as the body of my spaceship. Then I need to find the top of my spaceship, the top part. This fits, so we could make this the top of my spaceship, or I could use a larger piece for the top of my spaceship, or maybe even more of a triangle instead of a curved dome shape. Let's see, this one might be a little too small for this piece. So I think I'm going to go with this as the top of my spaceship. And then, now I need to decide what am I going to put here. This makes a good window, or I could cut my own square rectangle out. This is trim here. Maybe you wanted to add a ladder, or you just want to add some trim on the sides. That's up to you. And then we have the bottom. This oval here I thought looked good on this skinny rectangle, and that's my finished example has that. So that's what that oval is for. And then I have like the booster, the rocket boosters, which are this kind of triangle shape with the top cut off. And I have like one big rocket booster that could go on the bottom, or I could do two smaller rocket boosters. Let's see. And then these are kind of like the gear that holds the spaceship up, or almost like wings too. They could be wings. So you could decide, do you like that, or then there's bigger ones like this, or we have this shape. So I have quite a few of these wing shapes to choose from, different wing shapes. Okay. And just look, use the tagboard patterns. Don't fight it with your neighbor over them. Take turns and take a look, and just put your spaceship together and look at it and see what you like. And then once you kind of got a spaceship that you really like, then you're going to use this fun paper that I have here, the scrapbook paper that's got patterns, some doesn't have patterns, and you're going to use the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, to make your spaceship. So you're going to need some yellow paper, you're going to need some red paper, and a lot of them have patterns on them, but not all of them. You could use just plain red paper without any patterns, whatever you want. So I have my spaceship kind of put together the way that I want it, and I need two of these. I don't need two tagboard patterns, but I do need two of these. So if I fold this paper in half, will it fit? Probably not. So I'm going to get a second piece of this paper, stack them together, take my wing shape here, or it could be landing gear, I don't know which, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to trace it once on the top of this red paper, but then I'm going to keep the two pieces together, and I'm going to cut them out at the same time to save me a little bit of cutting and tracing. Instead of tracing it twice and cutting it twice, I can trace it once and cut it once, and then I have two pieces. So there's red. Let's see, maybe I do the top of my spaceship with the red. Now, what I like to do on the printed paper is I always like to flip it over and trace it on the back so you don't see any pencil on the pretty front of the printed paper. So I'm going to take, and I'm not going to take this pattern and put it right in the middle of the paper because that's kind of wasteful. So this is kind of scrap paper. Someone else has already used it, but I want to use it too. So I'm going to take my pattern and line it up with the edge of the paper and scoot it up close to where the last person used, so that when I cut this out, I have a lot of paper left over for somebody else who would like to use it. If I put this pattern shape, excuse me, right in the middle of the paper, it uses up a lot of the paper and doesn't leave a lot of scrap, but this is a nice big piece that somebody else could use. So this is going to be the top of my spaceship. So I'm going to use this yellow for the body of my spaceship. And again, I'm tracing on the back of the spaceship, or on the back of the printed paper so I don't mess up the print with pencil. And I'm going to cut that out. And I put that right along the edge, so now I have a nice big piece of paper left over for somebody else to use. So here's my yellow part of my spaceship, and now I need a blue part. And I think I'm just going to use this dark blue here. I'm going to do 2 rocket boosters, but I don't need to trace 2 separate patterns. I really only need 1 pattern. So I'm going to put this rocket booster, actually what I'm going to do is fold this paper and save myself a little bit of tracing and cutting. I'm going to fold this paper, put the pattern on the folded paper on the back on the white, so you don't see my pencil lines on the front of the blue. Trace 1 rocket booster, leave the paper folded, and cut 2 rocket boosters out at the same time because the paper is folded. So now I have 2 rocket boosters. All right, and so I could be finished with my spaceship right now, but it's got a lot of blank space here and here. So I think I'm gonna use this blue printed paper, and I'm gonna cut out a couple of windows. I'm gonna try to cut out a circle window for the top red part of my spaceship. Now, if you can't cut a neat circle out like I did without drawing it first, draw it first, please. Don't waste the paper and keep cutting and throwing away the paper when you don't like what you've cut out. So draw it first so you know you like it. And then I'm going to do another window here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and this is going to be my window. So there's my spaceship in the primary color. So now I'm ready to glue my spaceship together and put it onto my printed paper. So my printed paper is still a little wet with the paint. It's not quite dry, so I'm going to try and be careful and not to mess up the paint. When you glue your spaceship onto your background paper, your paint will be all dry and you won't have to worry about this like I have to worry about it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and glue my spaceship together first before I put it onto the black paper. So I'm going to put a line of glue on the back of the window, glue that to the middle. Pick up the top of my spaceship, put a line of glue just on the edge that's going to overlap onto the yellow, and glue that on. A line of glue or a frame of glue on the back of the window. And then my wings or my landing gear, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to glue that on. And I'm going to try and make sure that I line them up, that I don't have one way higher than the other. And then my rocket boosters, I'm going to add some fun tissue paper on the end of my rocket boosters to look like it's the fire shooting out the side of my spaceship. So I have cut some strips of tissue paper for us to use. So when you're ready to glue your rocket boosters onto your spaceship, you're going to flip your rocket boosters over. And the rocket booster, the wide part of the rocket booster is the bottom. And then you're going to take the tissue paper strips and cut them in half and glue them hanging off your rocket. Alright, so I'm going to finish gluing my tissue paper onto the rocket boosters here. And you can just do a few pieces. You don't have to do this at all. If you don't like this idea of the tissue paper for the rocket boosters as like the fire coming out of the rocket boosters, you don't have to do this. You can skip this part. And so now I'm going to glue the rocket boosters, the top of the rocket booster, onto the bottom of my spaceship. So the tissue paper gets glued to the back side, not the front side of the rocket booster, because that wouldn't look as nice. So it gets glued to the back side of your rocket booster. And there is my spaceship. It's very wet with glue, so everything's wanting to slide around on me, so I'm going to be really careful. This same thing's going to happen to you. It's all going to be wet with glue and it's going to want to slide around. So you need to be extra careful when you flip it over. Or give it a little bit of time for the glue to get sticky. Maybe let it sit there for a few minutes. And then put a frame of glue on the back of your spaceship. And very carefully, you're going to glue it to the middle of your painted paper. And there you have your primary spaceship collage on a mono printed background space paper.